Holy crap, we're doing it. Yeah, it's interesting because today I am kind of talking about social media and optics and a lot of other things having to do with regulation. And I just think it's funny that on this particular topic, um, I entered today feeling pretty unprepared for this video, and eventually you just kind of have to get to this place where you're like, fuck it, I'm doing this anyways, because I want the truth to be represented. I want honesty and authenticity to come out, even if it's not polished, even if it's not perfect. And we just do the best we can. So, yeah, over the weekend, got the news about the U.S. involvement in Iran, and I had a very visceral reaction to it. I was very angry immediately. Hey, what's up, brother? I got a couple on IG Live. Cool. Um, yeah, I had a very visceral reaction to this news. As I'm sure, I had a call last night with a bunch of people, and I think that's a pretty common thing that's going on right now, especially in the veteran community. And my first reaction to it was to kind of freak out and to be very angry. And I really wanted to like lash out and immediately start posting my opinion and just condemnation of war and violence and all this stuff. And I got very emotional about it. And I really wish that I could say that it's was like my this like regulated healthy me that kind of like brought me back to center. But what gave me pause was quite the opposite, and it was actually I considered how other people would view me, which also gave me more pause. And I was like, oh man, well, I can't be posting all this like, angry, emotional stuff when my whole message is basically regulation and come like staying in the pocket as much as you can. And so I really struggled with it. And I was like, what am I doing on social media? Am I representing the truth? Am I representing something that's not me? And it just led me to start pulling on all of these threads. And what I eventually got to was that, like, regulation doesn't mean the absence of reaction. And it doesn't mean staying regulated all the time. It means the practice of return. And that was really important. That was really important for me over the weekend when I did this. And so I also think that kind of requires the ability and the willingness to get curious with ourselves. And so when I did that, I started pulling all these different threads, and I didn't like respond in the moment, right? So I like closed my phone and I actually like started thinking again, which I think is probably it's much healthier response than just barfing up, whatever comes to mind right out of the get go. But I ended up getting curious about just social media in general and all these different kind of crusades and causes that people have. And how it really is, it's very impossible for everyone to care about everything. And so it was very, I don't know, it's helpful for me because I can't expect people to be as fired up about the certain things as I am. Just like people can't expect me to be fired up about the causes that are near and dear to their heart. And so that kind of helped me, like, I guess, earn a little bit more empathy. And it was a very positive thing to come out of this. And I ended up, getting to the point where I was like, man, but I need to express this because I really do have an opinion on this whole situation. And so I said, like, what tools do I have available to me? And, instead of using this platform, that we all have via social media or whatever kind of, outreach that you have, instead of using the platform as a way to reach people and teach people, I kind of went back to how I started writing in the first place. And I just sat down and I said, like, I need to have a therapeutic writing session with myself. And that was incredibly helpful. And I think, like, in the meantime, it still helped me accomplish what my main goal is here, and that's to help educate and show people a different way of thinking. Um, And so I ended up being able to walk myself through my own thought process a little bit more rationally, a little bit more controlled, instead of just reacting and just staying in that emotional, reactive stage. So yeah, there is this kind of like performative, like optics driven side of doing the work. You have a lot of influencers and people who are very brand aware. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? But there is a major difference between like meditating for an aesthetic or like regulation as a brand and the actual like nitty gritty work itself, because the real work is definitely not glamorous, and it is definitely it doesn't make good content, honestly. And it's a very difficult thing to express because it's very felt, and it's not so much like able to be intellectualized, I guess. Um, but more and more in this kind of like digitally facing world, we have to confront ourselves with whether or not we're telling the truth. And that matters far less that we are kind of like telling the truth, like with someone else in mind. It has way more to do with just like, are we telling the truth to ourselves? Uh, and this is just like it's a thing that I think we all have to wrestle with. And it doesn't mean that you have to like expose every aspect of your life. Like that's all informational power within your control. And obviously there is a very like nuanced subject, but I still think that the base of it, right? Like at the core is this confrontation with authenticity and whether or not you are being true. And if you are trying to stay regulated, then a lot of times the truth of a moment is not the truth, that's going to last. And so it's really important to be able to hit that pause button when you do experience something that's, triggering. Um, and so, like, we can hold kind of like our reactions inside of us for a second. And that does not mean suppress them, it means considering them. And getting curious about them before we choose to react, right? And in doing so, we can kind of like, we can question a lot of the questions kind of come from where am I, where is this coming from, right? Like for me, it was like, why am I so upset about this U.S. involvement in Iran? Well, obviously, it's because I know what it feels like to serve overseas, and I know how jaded I am about the U.S. kind of like. I feel like I was lied to by the government. I think that that is pretty common for a lot of GWAT veterans. I went with this kind of stars and stripes in my eyes, and believing that I was, doing this for my country, and what it ended up being was just, I did it for the guys that were with me. Actually, one of them was on this call. What's up, Andrew? But yeah, I mean, obviously that is, near and dear to my heart because of the experiences that I've had in my life. And so it makes it much easier to see why people get excited and emotional about things that are happening that are important to them. It's because of where we've been, what we've been through, and how our nervous system is conditioned to respond. And if we just sit for a second and think it through, it is so much easier to respond and have a considered response rather than a reaction. So yeah, really, really important. And that's not to say that like non-reactivity means that you don't care. I think it's quite the opposite. A lot of times, if you do not show emotion or charge or like an immediate response or have an immediate answer to a question, um, people on the other side of that equation, right? They will take that as apathy, and it is not the case. In fact, I think it's the exact opposite. If you have the true care to evaluate your opinions, evaluate where they're coming from, evaluate your history, evaluate your conditioning as it applies to your response to an event or a situation or a trigger, that to me shows that you have more care than most people do that are just willing to react in a situation. And I think that this combination of intelligence that is aligned with the emotions that we naturally feel when we're triggered or when things happen. I think that this is really the key is applying the intelligence alongside the emotion. Um, yeah, and so I kind of want to just end this with as things continue to develop, I would definitely urge most that you consider whether or not you are outsourcing your opinions and outsourcing your emotions to a tribe. And to something that is being impressed upon us, because there's just so much of it, right? And it's very effective. There's billions of dollars being poured into how to affect people's thoughts using messaging. And when we outsource our discernment, we outsource everything, right? Like we skip all of the steps that allow us to stay regulated and that allow us to stay effective in this life. So, yeah, the last part of that is this is something that requires practice. Uh, and a lot of it, obviously. I practice every day, and I still have experiences, like this weekend that just completely throw me off guard and just send me into this wild, loop of confusion that takes time for me to recenter with and get back to zero with. So, yeah, awesome. Thanks so much for being here, guys. I really appreciate it. Really nice seeing everybody. And yeah, thanks so much. If there's something that you like about this that you'd like me to answer maybe in the future, definitely reach out. Let me know. And I'm going to keep on rocking with these weekly. I see a couple more people on Instagram now. So I'll keep on trying to do the IG lives alongside of this. And yeah, we'll keep rocking. Cheers, guys. Thanks.